Hypothetically speaking, that right now you possess the power to become completely immune to one of the most destructive emotions known to humanity. An emotion that has ended marriages, destroyed friendships, ruined careers, and in extreme cases, even led to violence. An emotion that ancient philosophers warned about over 2,000 years ago, and that modern psychologists still struggle to help people overcome today. I'm talking about jealousy. And here's what most people don't understand. Jealousy isn't just an uncomfortable feeling you have to learn to live with. It's a psychological pattern that can be completely dismantled, piece by piece, until it no longer has any power over you. Over the next several minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to build what I call emotional armor against jealousy. This isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending they don't exist. This is about understanding the deep psychological mechanisms that create jealousy in the first place, and then systematically removing their power over your life. The techniques I'm about to share come from two powerful sources: ancient Stoic philosophy, which has been helping people achieve emotional resilience for over 2 millennia, and modern cognitive behavioral therapy, which represents the cutting edge of psychological science. When you combine these two approaches, something remarkable happens. You don't just manage jealousy, you become genuinely immune to it. And listen, if this information resonates with you, if you can already feel that this is exactly what you've been searching for, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me about your experience with jealousy. Your engagement tells me that this content matters, that it's genuinely helping people break free from emotional patterns that have been holding them back for years, maybe even decades. Now, before we dive deep into the strategies, I want you to understand something crucial. What I'm about to teach you isn't theory. These are proven, evidence-based techniques that have been validated by both ancient wisdom and modern research. The question isn't whether these methods work. The question is whether you're ready to put in the effort to transform your emotional life forever. Let's begin. Understanding the anatomy of jealousy. Before we can build armor against jealousy, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. And here's where most people get it completely wrong. Jealousy is not a simple emotion. It's a complex psychological response that involves your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, and your relationships with others. According to cognitive behavioral research, jealousy operates on multiple levels simultaneously, which is exactly why it feels so overwhelming when it strikes. First, let's clarify something important. Jealousy is not the same as envy, though people often confuse the two. Envy is when you want something someone else has, their success, their possessions, their status. Jealousy, on the other hand, always involves at least 3 people. It's the fear or anger that a relationship you value is being threatened by a third party. Think about it. Romantic jealousy happens when you perceive someone else as a threat to your relationship with your partner. Sibling jealousy occurs when you feel a brother or sister is getting more attention from your parents. Professional jealousy emerges when you believe a colleague is threatening your position or relationship with your boss. In every case, there's you, someone you have a special relationship with, and a perceived threat. Here's what makes jealousy so powerful and so destructive. It's actually an ancient evolutionary response that helped our ancestors protect important relationships. Our brains are literally wired to detect threats to our closest bonds, because for most of human history, losing those relationships could mean death. In a tribal society, being cast out meant you probably wouldn't survive. But here's the problem. That ancient alarm system in your brain doesn't know the difference between genuine threats and imagined ones. It doesn't distinguish between real betrayal and unfounded suspicion. It simply screams danger and floods your system with stress hormones, preparing you for a fight that often doesn't even exist. According to research by clinical psychologist Robert Leahy, who literally wrote the book on treating jealousy with cognitive behavioral therapy, jealousy functions like a form of anxious worry. Your mind becomes hyper-vigilant, scanning constantly for signs of threat. You ruminate endlessly, playing scenarios over and over in your head. You seek reassurance, but no amount of reassurance ever feels like enough. And here's where it gets truly destructive. The behaviors that jealousy triggers, interrogating your partner, checking their phone, accusing them without evidence, withdrawing emotionally, or making threats, these behaviors don't protect your relationship, they actively damage it. They push away the very person you're trying to hold on to. Studies have shown that jealous behaviors are one of the leading predictors of relationship breakdown. In extreme cases, what psychologists call morbid jealousy or pathological jealousy, these patterns can become obsessive and even dangerous. But here's the crucial insight that changes everything. While you can't always control the initial flash of jealous feeling, that's your ancient brain doing its job, you absolutely can control what happens next. You can learn to observe that feeling, understand it, and choose a completely different response.
This is where emotional armor comes in, and this is where we begin building it, piece by piece. The Stoic foundation, mastering the dichotomy of control. The first and most powerful piece of emotional armor against jealousy comes from Stoic philosophy, and it's called the dichotomy of control. This single concept, properly understood and applied, can revolutionize your entire emotional life. The Stoics, ancient philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, recognized a fundamental truth about human suffering. Most of our emotional pain doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from our judgments about what happens to us, and from trying to control things that are fundamentally beyond our control. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, put it simply: some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. Let's apply this directly to jealousy. What can you actually control? You can control your own thoughts, your interpretations, your reactions, and your behavior. You can control whether you communicate openly and honestly. You can control whether you act with integrity and respect. You can control whether you work on building trust and intimacy in your relationships. What can't you control? You cannot control what your partner thinks or feels about other people. You cannot control whether they find someone else attractive. You cannot control their past, their memories, or their fantasies. You cannot control whether someone else flirts with them. You cannot control every moment of their day or every interaction they have. And here's the liberating truth that the Stoics understood. When you try to control things that are beyond your control, you guarantee your own suffering. It's like trying to stop the ocean with your hands. All you accomplish is exhaustion and frustration. Think about the mental energy you waste when you're consumed by jealousy. Hours spent checking their social media. Mental gymnastics trying to interpret every word, every glance, every delay in responding to a text. Imagine if you redirected all that energy into things you actually can control. Becoming a better partner, developing your own interests, building genuine trust through consistent, authentic communication. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire while practicing Stoic philosophy, wrote in his personal journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside event. Realize this, and you will find strength." This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you focus your energy where it can actually make a difference. In relationships, this means accepting that the only person you can truly control is yourself. You can be trustworthy, honest, loving, and committed, but you cannot make someone else be these things through surveillance, interrogation, or emotional manipulation. Here's a practical exercise to build this first layer of armor. When you feel jealousy rising, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. First, what exactly am I trying to control right now? Be specific. Are you trying to control your partner's thoughts, their attention, someone else's behavior? Second, is this actually within my power to control? Be honest with yourself. Can you actually control whether your partner finds someone attractive, or whether a colleague gets a promotion you wanted? Third, what is within my power in this situation? This shifts your focus toward productive action. You can control how you communicate your feelings. You can control whether you act with dignity. You can control whether you invest in strengthening the relationship through positive means. This practice, done consistently, begins to retrain your brain. Instead of spiraling into anxiety about things you cannot control, you redirect your energy toward things you can. This is the foundation of emotional armor. This is where immunity to jealousy begins. The cognitive restructuring, challenging your jealous thoughts. Now we move to the second layer of armor, and this comes directly from cognitive behavioral therapy. This is where we take apart the actual thoughts that fuel jealousy and examine whether they're actually true. Here's something most people don't realize. Jealousy isn't caused by external events. It's caused by your interpretation of those events. 2 people can experience the exact same situation, say watching their partner have an animated conversation with an attractive person at a party, and have completely different emotional responses. One person feels secure and happy that their partner is enjoying themselves. The other person spirals into jealous anxiety. What's the difference? It's not the situation, it's the thoughts about the situation. CBT research has identified several specific thought patterns that consistently fuel jealousy. Psychologists call these cognitive distortions, and once you learn to recognize them, you can challenge and change them. The first is mind reading. This is when you assume you know what someone else is thinking without any real evidence. She finds him more attractive than me. He's thinking about his ex right now. My boss likes my colleague better than me. These thoughts feel absolutely certain when you're experiencing them, but they're actually complete speculation. The second is fortune telling. This is when you predict the future with absolute certainty, usually in the most negative possible way. He's going to leave me for someone better. This friendship is going to end. I'm going to be replaced. Again, these feel like facts, but they're predictions based on fear, not evidence. The third is catastrophizing. This is when you blow things out of proportion and imagine the worst possible outcome. If my partner finds someone attractive, it means our relationship is over. If my friend spends time with other people, it means I'm not important to them. The actual event might be minor, but your mind turns it into a catastrophe. The fourth is overgeneralizing. This is when you take one incident and treat it as proof of a universal pattern. Men can't be trusted. Every time I get close to someone, they betray me. People always leave me. One experience becomes evidence for an absolute rule about how the world works. Here's how you challenge these distortions. When you notice a jealous thought, write it down. Actually write it down. Then ask yourself these questions. What's my evidence for this thought? Not your feelings, not your fears, but actual concrete evidence. If you think she's interested in him, what specific evidence do you have? Often you'll realize you're building a case on very little actual data. What's the evidence against this thought? Force yourself to look for contradictory evidence. She chose to be with me. She's told me she loves me. She came home when she said she would have. This isn't about being naive. It's about being fair and balanced in your assessment. What would I tell a friend who had this thought? We're often much more rational and compassionate with others than we are with ourselves. If your best friend came to you with this jealous thought, what would you say to them? What's a more balanced way to think about this? This isn't about replacing negative thoughts with
The emotional schema. Understanding your meta-beliefs about jealousy. Now we go deeper. This third layer of armor addresses something psychologists call your emotional schema, your beliefs about emotions themselves. Most people who struggle with intense jealousy don't just have jealous feelings, they have beliefs about those feelings that make everything worse. And these meta-beliefs, beliefs about beliefs, create a vicious cycle that intensifies the jealousy. Dr. Robert Leahy's research on emotional perfectionism reveals a critical pattern. Many people believe they should never feel jealous at all. They think jealousy is a sign of weakness, a character flaw, or proof that they're not good enough. So when they do feel jealous, which is a normal human emotion, they feel ashamed of feeling it, which makes the jealousy even worse. This is what psychologists call emotional perfectionism. It's the belief that you should only have positive, pleasant emotions, and that negative emotions are unacceptable. If you believe this, then feeling jealous becomes a double burden. Not only are you feeling jealous, but you're also judging yourself harshly for feeling that way. There's also romantic perfectionism, which is the belief that if you and your partner truly love each other, you should never have any jealous feelings, any attraction to others, any moments of doubt or insecurity. This belief sets an impossible standard that no real relationship can meet. And there's what Leahy calls pure mind, which is the belief that your partner should only have pure thoughts about you, never finding anyone else attractive, never thinking about past relationships, never having any feelings that might trigger your jealousy. All of these beliefs are unrealistic, and they make jealousy much more painful than it needs to be. Here's the truth that provides the foundation for this layer of armor. Jealousy, in reasonable amounts, is a normal human emotion. It's part of how we signal to ourselves and others that a relationship matters to us. The problem isn't having jealous feelings occasionally, the problem is how we interpret those feelings and what we do in response to them. There's a crucial distinction between jealousy feelings and jealousy behaviors. You might feel a flash of jealousy when your partner mentions an attractive coworker. That feeling is natural and automatic. What matters is what you do next. Do you interrogate them, accuse them, withdraw emotionally? Or do you acknowledge the feeling to yourself, understand where it's coming from, and choose a healthy response? Research shows that people in healthy relationships do experience occasional jealous feelings. The difference is they don't catastrophize about having those feelings, and they don't act on them in destructive ways. Here's how you build this layer of armor. You normalize your emotional experience. You accept that jealousy, like all emotions, is a natural part of being human. You separate the feeling from the meaning you assign to it. When you feel jealous, instead of thinking, "I'm weak," or "there's something wrong with me," or "this proves I'm not good enough," you think, "I'm having a feeling of jealousy right now. This is my brain's way of telling me that this relationship matters to me. The feeling will pass. I don't have to act on it." You also challenge your beliefs about what relationships should be like. Instead of expecting that neither you nor your partner should ever find anyone else attractive, you accept that attraction is a normal human response that doesn't threaten your relationship. Instead of thinking your partner should read your mind and anticipate all your needs, you accept that clear communication is essential. This shift in your meta-beliefs, your beliefs about your emotions and your relationships, creates profound change. When you stop fighting against the normal ups and downs of emotional life, when you stop demanding perfection from yourself and your partner, the jealousy loses much of its intensity. You're no longer dealing with jealousy plus shame plus fear plus self-judgment. You're just dealing with a moment of insecurity that you can address rationally and compassionately. The mindfulness practice, creating space between feeling and action. The fourth layer of your emotional armor comes from mindfulness practices, which have been integrated into modern cognitive behavioral approaches and align beautifully with ancient Stoic philosophy. Here's the key insight. There's a space between feeling an emotion and acting on that emotion. Most people who struggle with jealousy experience it as one continuous process. Something happens, jealousy arises, and they immediately act on it. It all feels like one thing. But it's not one thing. It's several distinct things. And when you learn to see the spaces between them, everything changes. When something triggers a jealous response, here's what actually happens, broken down into separate steps. First, there's the triggering event. Your partner laughs at someone else's joke. A colleague gets praised for work similar to yours. A friend cancels plans to spend time with someone else. Second, there's the physical sensation of jealousy in your body, tension in your chest, a sinking feeling in your stomach, heat rising in your face, your heart rate increasing. Third, there are the automatic thoughts we've already discussed, the mind reading, the fortune telling, the catastrophizing. Fourth, there's the emotional experience, anxiety, anger, sadness, insecurity, fear. And fifth, there's the behavioral urge, the impulse to check their phone, to interrogate them, to accuse them, to withdraw, to seek reassurance. Most people experience all of this as one undifferentiated mass of "I'm jealous and I need to do something about it right now." But mindfulness teaches you to slow down and observe each piece separately. The practice is simple in concept but requires consistent effort. When you notice jealousy arising, you pause. You don't try to suppress it or make it go away. You simply observe it with curiosity and without judgment. I notice tension in my chest. I notice my thoughts racing. I notice the urge to grab my phone and check their messages. I notice fear. I notice anger. You name what you're experiencing without getting caught up in the story your mind is telling. This practice, which psychologists call cognitive diffusion, creates distance between you and your thoughts. Your thoughts are not facts. They're mental events that arise and pass away. When you observe them rather than believe them automatically, they lose their power to control your behavior. The Stoics called this seeing things as they are. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Objective judgment now, at this very moment. Unselfish action now, at this very moment. Willing acceptance now, at this very moment, of all external events." In practical terms, this means when jealousy arises, you observe it as an internal event rather than truth about external reality. I'm having the thought that my partner is interested in someone else is very different from my partner is interested in someone else. The first is an observation of your mental process. The second is a claim about reality that may or may not be true. When you create this space through mindfulness, you gain the freedom to choose your response. You don't have to act on every jealous impulse.
You can feel the feeling, observe the thoughts, and then make a conscious decision about what to do next. Maybe you decide to communicate your feelings in a non-accusatory way. I noticed I felt a bit insecure when you were talking with that person at the party. It's not about you doing anything wrong. I'm just sharing what I experienced. Maybe you decide that the jealous thought isn't based on reality and you simply let it pass without acting on it. Maybe you decide to use the jealous feeling as information about your own insecurities that you need to address through personal growth work. The key is that you're making a choice based on wisdom and values, not reacting automatically based on fear. Research on mindfulness-based cognitive therapy has shown that this approach is highly effective for managing difficult emotions, including jealousy. People who practice mindfulness report less intense emotional reactions, better emotional regulation, and healthier relationships. This is your fourth layer of armor, the ability to observe your jealous experiences without being controlled by them, to create space between stimulus and response, and to choose your actions based on your values rather than your fears.
The relationship practices, building genuine security. The fifth layer of emotional armor isn't about managing jealousy when it arises. It's about creating the conditions where jealousy arises less frequently and less intensely in the first place. Jealousy thrives in environments of uncertainty, poor communication, and insecurity. It diminishes in environments of trust, open communication, and genuine connection. So part of becoming immune to jealousy is building relationships in ways that create real security rather than manufactured reassurance. Here's what research tells us about healthy relationships that naturally minimize jealousy. They're built on clear communication, consistent trustworthy behavior, emotional intimacy, and mutual respect for autonomy. Clear communication means talking directly about feelings, needs, and expectations rather than expecting your partner to read your mind. If you feel insecure, you express that directly. "I'm feeling a bit insecure about us lately," rather than indirectly through accusations or passive-aggressive behavior. It also means having explicit conversations about boundaries and agreements. What does fidelity mean in your relationship? What behaviors are okay, and what crosses a line? When these things are clear and agreed upon, there's less room for the uncertainty that breeds jealousy. Consistent, trustworthy behavior means doing what you say you'll do, being where you say you'll be, and maintaining integrity in your actions. When both partners consistently demonstrate trustworthiness, trust builds naturally over time, and trust is the antidote to jealousy. But here's something crucial. Many people who struggle with jealousy seek reassurance from their partners constantly. "Do you love me? Are you attracted to me? You're not interested in them, are you?" This reassurance seeking actually makes jealousy worse, not better. Why? Because no amount of reassurance ever feels like enough when you're in a jealous state. Your partner can tell you they love you 100 times, and the jealous part of your mind will still find reasons to doubt. The reassurance provides temporary relief, but reinforces the pattern of dependency and anxiety. Instead, genuine security comes from building self-worth that isn't dependent on constant validation from your partner. It comes from developing your own interests, maintaining your own friendships, pursuing your own goals. When your entire sense of worth isn't tied up in one relationship, that relationship becomes less precarious and less anxiety-inducing. The Stoics understood this. They taught that your well-being should come from your own character and values, not from external circumstances, including other people's feelings toward you. That doesn't mean relationships don't matter. It means your fundamental sense of okayness comes from within, not from constant validation from others. Healthy relationships also maintain what psychologists call differentiation, the ability to be emotionally connected while remaining separate individuals. You can be deeply in love while still having separate interests, separate friends, and separate experiences. In fact, this separateness often strengthens relationships rather than weakening them. When you approach relationships from a place of wholeness rather than neediness, jealousy has less fertile ground to grow in. You're not desperately clinging to someone out of fear that without them you're nothing. You're choosing to be with them because you value them,
while also knowing that your worth doesn't depend on them choosing you back. This doesn't mean you don't care deeply. It means you care from a place of strength rather than a place of desperation. Here's a practical application. Instead of spending your energy monitoring your partner's behavior, invest that energy in becoming the kind of person you want to be. Develop your interests, cultivate your friendships, pursue your goals, work on your character. Be the kind of partner someone would be lucky to have, not because you're trying to prevent them from leaving, but because that's who you genuinely want to be. This shift in focus transforms the whole dynamic. You're not trying to prevent loss through control. You're creating value through growth. The integration, putting it all together. Now we bring all 5 layers of armor together into a complete system of immunity against jealousy. When a potentially jealousy-triggering situation arises, here's how someone with fully developed emotional armor responds. First, they apply the dichotomy of control. They immediately recognize what they can and cannot control in the situation. They accept what's beyond their control and focus their energy on their own thoughts, feelings, and actions. Second, they challenge their jealous thoughts using cognitive restructuring. They recognize mind reading, fortune telling, catastrophizing, and overgeneralizing for what they are, distortions, not facts. They actively look for evidence against their jealous thoughts and develop more balanced interpretations. Third, they maintain healthy meta-beliefs about emotions. They don't catastrophize about feeling jealousy. They recognize it as a normal human emotion that doesn't define them or doom their relationship. They separate feeling jealousy from acting on jealousy in destructive ways. Fourth, they use mindfulness to create space between the feeling and any potential action. They observe the physical sensations, the thoughts, the emotions, without being controlled by them. They choose their response based on their values rather than their immediate emotional impulses. Fifth, they've built their relationships on a foundation of genuine security, clear communication, consistent trustworthiness, emotional intimacy, and healthy differentiation. This foundation means jealousy arises less frequently and less intensely in the first place. The result? They experience moments of jealous feelings sometimes. They're human after all. But those feelings don't control them. They don't spiral into hours or days of anxious rumination. They don't damage their relationships with accusatory or controlling behavior. They don't damage themselves with shame and self-criticism. They feel the feeling, understand it, and move through it with grace and wisdom. This is what immunity to jealousy actually looks like. Not the absence of ever feeling it, but the ability to experience it without being controlled by it. Your path forward. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground. We've explored the psychology of jealousy, the stoic dichotomy of control, cognitive restructuring techniques, emotional schemas, mindfulness practices, and relationship principles. But knowledge without practice is just information. The real transformation happens when you consistently apply these principles in your daily life. Start small. You don't have to master all 5 layers of emotional armor at once. Pick one technique, maybe challenging your jealous thoughts using the cognitive questions, or practicing the dichotomy of control when you feel yourself trying to control the uncontrollable. Practice that technique consistently for a week. Notice what changes. Then add another layer. Build your armor piece by piece, day by day. Remember, this is a skill, not an on-off switch. You're literally rewiring decades of conditioning. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when you fall back into old patterns. That's normal. That's part of the process. What matters is that you keep practicing, keep returning to these principles, keep building your emotional resilience. The ancient Stoics knew something that modern psychology has confirmed. You have far more control over your emotional life than you think. Your feelings don't just happen to you. They emerge from your thoughts, beliefs, interpretations, your choices. And all of those things can be trained, refined, and transformed. 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." He was right. The jealousy or peace you experience depends largely on how you think about your relationships, about yourself, about uncertainty and control. You have the power to change those thoughts. You have the power to build armor against jealousy. You have the power to become someone who experiences the full depth of love and connection without the constant anxiety of jealousy fear. That's not just freedom from jealousy. That's freedom to love fully, to trust deeply, to live without the constant vigilance and suspicion that jealousy demands. That's the life that's possible when you develop genuine emotional immunity. If this video has opened your eyes to new possibilities, if you're committed to building this armor in your own life, I need you to do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel so you never miss content that could transform your emotional life. Second, leave a comment sharing your biggest takeaway or your experience with jealousy. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Third, and most importantly, choose one technique from this video and commit to practicing it for the next week. Real change comes from consistent action, not just good intentions.
The suggested video appearing on your screen right now will deepen what you've learned today. It's the perfect next step in your journey toward emotional mastery. Click on it now. Your freedom from jealousy doesn't start tomorrow. It starts right now, with the choice to see your emotional life not as something that happens to you, but as something you actively create. Make that choice. Build that armor. Transform that life. The power has always been yours. Now you know how to use it.